That's how I want to start out. You might not all be able to see that. It's okay. You'll get the idea. I want you to consider for a minute the emotions that go into playing a game of Monopoly. Yes. Think about it. All right? There's this range of emotions that take place. All right, get the board out here. First of all, you got excitement over accumulating piles of colored paper. It's just, wow, I'm doing so well. And there are exuberance over collecting stacks of fictitious properties. And yes. I'm going to put some more in there. More. And there's the anxiety of coming up on St. James Place as you make another round on the board, and it belongs to someone else, and they got enough little greenhouses on St. James Place properties to build a subdivision, and you almost start praying to yourself, Lord, please don't let me land on St. James Place, on Tennessee Avenue, or on New York. And then thankfully, your little token makes it to free parking, and you get to collect the cash in the cash pit on free parking, and you're really good to go, and you don't pray again until you start coming up on Boardwalk where somebody's got a hotel, all right? And you're praying you don't land there. Now, if you own Boardwalk with a hotel on it, you're praying that someone will have bad luck, aren't you? You're praying, please let that little, let's see, I'm the car. Please let the thimble land on Boardwalk so I can crush my best friend. And of course, there's the loser. There's the loser. There's the person who's not doing well. And you've got to suppress your feelings so you can be the bigger person, right? But you're not really doing well, and then you're just about dead in the game, and you're barely getting out of the game with your feelings. And at the very end, you want to say something, oh, that's just stupid. This is stupid. Well, I'm glad my life is about more than winning a board game. You just want to say stuff like that. Sour grapes. You feel all these feelings: excitement, anxiety, depression. But here's something magical that seems to take place in every Monopoly game. After all of these emotions, and you're getting lost into the wheeling and the dealing and crushing your foes and winning your friends, the game is over, and with one fell swoop, all the pieces go back in the box. Everybody is nulled out to zero. Even the person that had a phenomenal pile of cash and properties. It nulls to zero. Well, you know what this is? This is a little life lesson on perspectives, right? It's how you look at it. And I think that Christians sometimes forget a healthy perspective as we get lost in the board game. This is your life. And we tend to get lost in the what? In the excitement of accumulating paper with green ink. It has no actual intrinsic value. I think, what is it, like less than 1 cent? An actual piece of paper currency is less than something like that. And we just become full of adrenaline the more of it we get, because then we can buy other stuff that have no intrinsic worth, at least from the eternal perspective. The depression over maybe not having enough of the paper with green ink on it, and then the depression of knowing that definitely I don't have enough of the paper with green ink on it. And yet we all tend to forget as we get into the game, and I'm not trying to minimize our life here, but in terms of an eternal perspective, this is like a big board game. We tend to forget that at some point it will be over, and whatever that you have gotten goes back in the box. Your life, at least your possessions, null to zero. Everybody dies at the same economic standing, roughly broke. Everybody does. Trump's going to. All the big famous entrepreneurs of the 19th century all died, and the moment they died, they were all broke. That's how it works. So what God encourages us to do is to make sure that as we're handling this, because money is a necessity, let's face it, money is a necessity in this age. As we're handling this thing, we do so from the perspective of eternity. I'm a person with an eternal perspective that's handling this. I know it's going to all be over at some point. So the way I handle the tokens, the little property cards, the little colored paper cash, the way I handle this is all governed by my view that, wow, this is going to be really short here and it's going to be over. So I don't get lost in it. God encourages us to apply an eternal perspective to the way that we handle money so that we can live a no-regret life. So that having spent our entire life in the excitement, in the anxiety, in the depression, and having, oh, I'm ahead, and having gotten there, to see it all just disappear like that, and regret, I can't believe I threw my life into this board game. My life. As though nothing else mattered. God doesn't want us to have that kind of life, where at the end, we're sorry. We're supposed to have a no-regret life. Now, let's look at the biblical perspective on this whole thing. I'm just going to take you to one verse in Psalms, actually 2 verses in Psalms. Psalms 49, 16, and 17. All right, here's what it says. This is the biblical perspective on material riches. It says, "Be not afraid when a man becomes rich, when the glory of his house increases. For when he dies, he will carry nothing away. His glory will not go down after him." Now, when it says, "Be not afraid," you know what that's saying? It says, don't be intimidated. First of all, don't be intimidated, especially those of you who are younger. And you feel like, well, let's see, what kind of car do I have? Do I have my first home, my second home, or my vacation home? What kind of car? Is it just a Corolla? Is it an old Corolla? Is it a new car? And don't be intimidated when someone next to you begins to do well. And we all know how that feels, don't we? Some relative, you got a brother or sister that's really doing well, and you're not. You got a neighbor that suddenly starts doing real well. You got a best friend from high school. Stay away from the high school reunions, right? Always hang out with the guy that arrives in the old pickup. Hang out with him. You'll feel better about yourself. But anyway, don't be intimidated when a man becomes rich, when the glory of his house increases. Sometimes it just seems like it just keeps increasing, not yours, but theirs. They got an addition. Now they're putting on an addition. They just remodeled their basement and turned it into a movie theater. They got a whole movie theater down there with surround sound, and they've got a live butter popcorn maker down there, the real kind you see at the movies. They're putting in a pool. Now they put in a privacy fence so I can't see what's going on over there. Don't be intimidated. Verse 17, because when he dies, he'll carry nothing away. His glory will not go down after him. Everything that he has accumulated stays on the surface. It does not lower into the hole. It stays up at the surface. Now, what this verse is trying to tell us is not, first of all, these verses here are not trying to comfort us with the misfortune of others, as if to say, don't worry, he'll be dead soon. It's not telling us that. This verse warns us. It says, what's the action, the takeaway here? The action phrase in these verses, be not afraid, don't be intimidated. In other words, don't let yourself enter into the pattern of keeping up with the Joneses. Because all of you at some time or other, especially if you're really young, you're very bothered. You're always looking, oh, how do I stand next to so-and-so and so-and-so? We're warned by these verses, don't go there. Don't go there. As a matter of fact, I'm reminded in 1922, there was a famous archaeologist named Howard Carter that opened the fabulous tomb of King Tut. And he said that burial chamber just almost knocked him out when he opened it up. He said it was so full of material wealth and treasure that he wasn't able to catalog it all in his lifetime. And to this day, they are still cataloging it. Listen, here's some of the stuff. Here's some of the stuff they found in King Tut's tomb. Jewelry, including bracelets, anklets, buckles, scarabs, amulets, pendants, pectorals, necklaces, earrings, collars, ear studs, rings, 6 golden chariots, couches, chairs, 2 thrones, ritual beds and headrests, gilded statues, chests, daggers and other weapons and shields, musical instruments, scribal equipment, lamps, ornaments, vases and jars, 139 ebony, ivory, silver, and gold walking sticks, clothing made of the finest linen, ostrich fans and golden fans, games, food and wine, perfume, oils and ointments, etc., etc., etc. Incredible. What does this tell you about the ancient Egyptian mindset about material possessions? It should sound very familiar. He who dies with the most toys, what? Wins. There's just one problem with that view. Everything that went into that burial chamber when he died is still there. Which tells us what? Nothing was needed. In death, nothing was needed. From the eternal perspective, at least, the sum total of all the treasures in that tomb is 0. You know, it's funny, the living here on earth, we get all excited when we see a burial chamber full of gold and silver and all that. We get all excited. And then everybody goes to work. They go, wow, how much is this worth? And somebody says, well, it is of inestimable value. It is priceless. Okay, but from the perspective of eternity, it is worthless. There's a less on the end of both words. Priceless to those who are alive with no view, and then worthless from the eternal perspective, which denotes reality. Of course, we laugh at this. We say, oh, isn't that ridiculous? Loading up a mausoleum full of gold coins. Like, what do you think? Where do you think you're going? Vegas? I mean, this is the way we look at it. We kind of laugh. Oh, isn't that superstitious? But yet something tells me that we still entertain, at least at the subconscious level, the same kind of attitudes. Look at the way we irrationally, and I'm including myself in this, we irrationally gather and accumulate and then try to hold what we got. We Christians may not differ very much from an ancient pagan Egyptians. I think human nature doesn't really change that much. So we often need some kind of perspective adjustment, i.e., Psalm 49. This should adjust our perspective a bit. Now you say, well, okay, by common sense and by the Bible, we know you can't take it with you. All right, you've established that. We kind of know that. Here's something you might not know. You can't take it with you, but you can take the positive effect of it with you. All right, I want you to think about that for a second. You can't take material riches with you, but you can take the positive effect of them with you. Jesus says so. All right, tell you a little story that he told in Luke chapter 16. He said, we don't have to go there yet, though, all right? I'll paraphrase it, kind of put it in contemporary language here, but he said that there was a rich guy, a really loaded guy, and he hired a financial manager. Now remember, financial managers are they don't own the money, they're just supposed to manage it. It's not theirs, right? But this guy, this financial manager, started to act irresponsibly. He started to throw money at all kinds of crazy investment schemes, not collecting on accounts, things like this. And the rich man heard about it and called him up and said, hey, my finances are a mess, you're out. Pack your bags, you're out of here. All right. So the manager, the financier, is just, he's like hit like a bolt out of the blue. He feels like, wow, what am I going to do? The life that I've become accustomed to is coming to an end. Where will I go? What will I do? He said, I'm not trained for anything else. He said, I don't want to beg, and I don't have the physical vitality for the blue-collar thing, the construction crews and all that. I can't do any of that. He said, what am I going to do? I'm out of here, probably on Friday, right? HR says that's the best time to fire somebody is on a Friday. You're not laughing. But they say it's true psychologically. So he's thinking, what am I going to do? So he comes up with this plan. He says, I know what I'll do. I'll go to all of my boss's borrowers, and I'll make friends with them. So that when I get thrown out this Friday, when I get thrown out, I'll have a place to go. I'll have made friends with them. So you know how he makes friends with them? This is interesting. He goes to one borrower and he says, hey, what do you owe my boss? And the guy says, well, I owe him $20,000. And then the manager says, just write me a check for 10 and you're square with the house. Okay, then he goes down the street, there's another guy. How much do you owe my boss? He said, $5,000. He said, write me a check for $4,200 and we're even. That's how I made friends. And you say, well, wait a minute, is that legal? Because it looks like he cut into what was actually owed. Actually, what it looks like is happening is that was his commission that he was cutting out and the crazy interest rate that he had assigned the loan. The manager, right? So he's cutting out his own profit. And he's letting them even their debt out at a much, much lower price. And so obviously these guys are now very friendly to him. Like, yeah, you're our best friend. We like you. Actually, the rich guy hears about this and he says, that manager must be smart after all. And you know what? Jesus also appreciated this. Actually, he's called an unrighteous manager because that's what got him fired, is being a louse. But Jesus says, well, in Luke chapter 16, verse 9, right? Jesus himself said, and I tell you, make friends for yourselves. He says, you know the story I just told? Make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth. Now follow me through this. Jesus tells his disciples to make friends by using unrighteous wealth. That means money in this temporal, sinful world that is typically used for all kinds of evil purposes and for material pursuits and for worldly pleasures and all that. He's telling us, look, take some of that and make friends with it. In other words, take it and use it to promote the eternal well-being of human souls. Make friends that way. Use that money that would have just simply gone into the world economy and funded all kinds of evil things. He said, how about hijack some of it and put it into the eternal well-being of some souls? Make friends with unrighteous wealth. Then he says, so that when it fails, follow me in the verse, so that when it, that is the money of unrighteous wealth, when it fails, because it's going to fail and null out to zero. Remember, the game's coming to an end, right? So that when it fails, they, the souls that you have affected, may receive you into the eternal dwellings. Think about what this means. Now, your money doesn't go with you, but the positive effect of it does. And some people affected by your unrighteous wealth that you have used for their eternal well-being will not only go with you, they'll have, some of them have already preceded you into glory, and they're waiting. And Jesus says that they will welcome you in. That's his word to the disciples. Obviously, this message should not tell us that, nor did Jesus mean that if you pay money, you'll go to heaven. All right? This is not what that's supposed to mean. That was already settled when you believed in Jesus. That was free of charge, incidentally. There's no money involved in that. This is not about gaining an entrance into the kingdom. Jesus is concerned here with what kind of entrance would you like to have? What kind of entrance? Have you even thought about it? Jesus is always thinking about these kind of eternal things, and we hardly even think about it. Well, I'll just die and I'll float up to a celestial paradise. That's what we think. Just hit the up button. Doors open. I mean, it's silly stuff. But rather than float into eternity, Jesus is concerned with how. How do you want it? How do you want it to be? He tells the disciples, this is what I want for you. I want there to be a parade. I want there to be at least one or two or a little crowd of people that run up to you. For instance, right here in this room. You know what Jesus wants for you? He wants you to be celebrated when you enter into eternity. Received. Like, yeah, come on. What do you think about this, Ray? This guy's name is Ray. Okay. For about 5, 10, 15, maybe 100 people walk up to you and say, we know you. We never met you. But we know you because back in the day, we were all living in central Ohio. Back in the old days, we lived in Greater Columbus, and one of us got a bottle of water, and another of us heard something on a website, and somebody else got a hold of a book, and you funded that. In some kind of small way, you funded it. And by process of time, we all found the gospel of Jesus. You never knew it, though. Now you know it. That's the kind of entrance Jesus wants us to have. And I don't know, I don't want to read too much into this, but I'd like to think that they'd hoist this guy up on their shoulders and carry him in. That's the entrance Jesus wants you to have. Now, who's he? I don't know. Nobody in heaven owes him anything. We're going to do that for certain people that benefited us, and other people, hopefully, will do that for us. They're going to say, thank you. You were part of something, and that's why I am here. Well, here's how that we do it here at GCA, because this is a message on finance. We don't view money as being like membership fees. Like you go, so you owe. Instead, we like to look at money as making friends. We honestly believe that we are making a difference in eternity for people. We believe that. That is our perspective when we handle money in the church. Hopefully not just this church, but in all kinds of churches. That should be the perspective. We're making a difference, a forever difference for somebody. Every dollar that comes, that's what we're doing. We are not just running an organization. Although we are doing that too. We're keeping lights on and we're paying rents and stuff like this. But ultimately, why do we do that? Because we're making a difference. I want you to join us. If you have not up till now, I want you to join us in putting your money to work together. You say, well, how do we do that? I don't have very much money. I mean, everybody, let's face it, everybody's broke. Everybody's broke. Probably the most you've got, let's see, where's the ghetto property on here? That's Mediterranean. That's the ghetto property. You got that, is my guess. You know, nobody that owns Boardwalk is in this room. They're at some other place. But you're either single or you're a student or you got some kind of nickel and dime job or you're just trying to make ends meet. You got a good job and bills have already eaten all that up. So nobody feels like that they got it made. Everybody's on Baltic or Mediterranean. Now, here's what we suggest. When it comes to offering, or we call it tithing, actually the Old Testament refers to it as tithing. Start somewhere. Start somewhere. Enter in with us. Join together with us, making a difference in Grandview, if you haven't already. Start off somewhere. The Bible starts off at 10% in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, it's much more vague because the Bible makes room for grace to work. And you may offer a whole lot more than 10%. I don't know. But it just says in the New Testament, however you've prospered. So it makes room for tremendous levels of generosity to go in there. But you start somewhere, and if you don't know what else to do, just offer 10% of what you make, and you can say, well, then at least the Old Testament tells me to do this. We also encourage regular giving. Regular giving, that is giving on a regular basis. As you get paid, you give. As you get paid, you give. As you get paid, you give. Okay, this is a little bit different. Inspirational giving, where, the short, weird guy with the southern accent up front did a pretty good job, so you kind of get inspired and say, hey, honey, you got a 5 spot in your purse. Just throw it in there. Yeah, he did a good job. That's what I call inspirational giving. Try to practice regular giving because regular giving allows for regular ministry. As the man said, how much ministry will $1 do? Well, $1 worth of ministry, right? How much ministry will regular giving do? Well, regular ministry. That's the idea behind it. If you offer regularly, we minister regularly. If we minister regularly, we make friends regularly. I don't know about you, but here in Grandview, I want a whole bunch of people to feel like that they are in our debt. They wouldn't have grown in Christ, and they might not have even been saved unless we'd thrown a whole bunch of money in free parking right here. Unless we'd done that. So I want to encourage you, if you're already doing this, good for you. You're doing the right thing. If you hadn't started yet, try starting somewhere. Soon. Don't put it off, right? I'm going to say a little prayer for us, and I think that Michael has some extra information. Jesus, Lord, I thank you for the grace that you've provided all the way up until now, all the open hearts, all the generosity. We do want to be people who are so highly appreciated in eternity. Lord, right now we're unknown, and most of us are unknown. All our giving is secret, but one day it will be very known. Lord, in the grace that you have bestowed upon us and the happiness and the thankfulness on that day, and we want to be a part of that. In your name we pray. Amen.